There we go. We're eventually moving over to YouTube to go live for our final session of today from our virtual exhibit hall at the Tucson Festival of Books. I'm going to let all this pop up there on the screen here in just a moment. I think we're moving along nicely. There we go. Let that come in. You're in the right place. We're just a couple of minutes early to get rolling here. This presentation this evening is a bit more of a workshop to go live for our final set. As soon as I mute that side so you don't hear me echo. Our last session of today, there are 3 more sessions tomorrow, which we will talk about in just a moment. We're glad you're here. This is a bit more of a workshop than some of the other live. We've done 4 live streams so far today. This one, the last for Saturday, there'll be 3 more tomorrow. This one's a bit more of a workshop, and we'll talk more about publishing a book, answering some of those questions. We'll give this a moment to get to the right time, everything lined up. If you really would like to dive into the workshop, grab yourself something to write with, whether that's something you do on your phone or something you still do the old-fashioned way with pen and paper, however you do it. Go ahead and grab something to take some notes with. There'll be a couple of links that we think will be useful for you as we get to the end of today in particular. Plus, we'll give you a chance to enter a drawing to win one of the t-shirts from our weekend, our virtual weekend that we're having. Fantastic. So we'll move here in just a moment. If you have comments and questions as we go along, you can put them in the box there. So let's kind of dig in and go where we can go. I'll make sure that my screens are all working over here. I think we're good. So you have popped into the live stream for the Small Tooth Dog Publishing Group. This one, I'm on my own for this one. I'm Sean Bavala, and I'm the publisher at the Small Tooth Dog Publishing Group. And let me tell you, we have had a bunch of things today. If you go to smalltoothdog.com/TFOB, you'll see the links. If you'd like to see the rest of the lives so far that we have, it's smalltoothdog.com/YouTube, YOUTUBE, YouTube. And that's where you can see some of the other ones that have gone on. Tonight, we're going to do So You Want to Publish a Book, which is a workshop that I just want to share with you, give you some thoughts about publishing. This is a thing we can't really do in a live Tucson Festival of Books because it's loud and noisy, but I want you to pretend that this is one of those conversations maybe we have over dinner after the event, or maybe we go grab a coffee and we talk about some of this stuff, except it has slides. But other than that, so what's happening tomorrow? Tomorrow morning, Sunday at 10 a.m. Arizona time, we have a panel called What Have You Learned on Your Publishing Journey, which I will reference in here in just a moment, about what people think publishing is versus what it actually is. Then Sunday at 12 o'clock, I'll have more of a reflection time with you to talk about, thanks, Kelsey. I see you're putting your stuff in there. Kelsey is moderating our chat box today. Thanks, Kelsey. Sunday, 12 o'clock, as a workshop on Author Don't Write Your Book First. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, especially if you have a nonfiction book or you're developing kid-lit or children's books or books for families, what are the things you should be doing first, even before you write your book? It's a common thing to write a book and then figure it out. It should be the other way around. And then Sunday at 3 p.m. tomorrow, we'll have a really fun, short, just a fun special kind of panel where we'll talk about what's coming soon from those of us here at the Small Tooth Dog Publishing, what's some of the works that are in the future that are going to be moving along here. And I might have some sneak peeks at some sample art that we might be using on new books. So we're really excited about that. Again, if you don't have anything to write with, this might be a good time to do that. So we'll talk through that. So let's talk about this reality. So you want to publish a book. This is a picture of my grandmother, who was a secretary. I know now we say administrative assistant, but back in her day, she was a secretary. But she had these dreams. You know, she raised a whole passel of kids, the greatest generation, right? Husband came home from World War II, raised a whole bunch of kids in a really tiny little house. But the whole time she had a dream of putting a book together. I remember very much talking to her about this book, this idea that it would be a reflection on having grown up under the care and tutelage of French nuns, Roman Catholic French nuns. And so she had this dream of a book, and I think she had written some possibilities, had done kind of an outline, had done kind of what we now call a dummy book, things like that. And so she had put this together. And so she had this dream after this whole life that she lived to have this book published. So what happened to her years and years and years, decades ago, when publishing was a very different thing? What happened to her great little book? Well, hang on. We're going to talk about the realities of publishing today. There's my grandmother's influence about books and writing. That picture in the middle is me. From the very first press release I wrote, I got coverage in the newspaper. So this is like 1979. I think I was like a sophomore in high school or something. And I got coverage for doing magic shows that I was doing in the libraries. So I've been supporting libraries for a long time. So I was doing magic shows in the library, and that one young woman in the back there who's got kind of the striped shirt and she's leaning on the wall, that was my sister, who was like 13 months younger than me. And she would just stare at me. And whenever I would get eye contact with her in something, she'd whisper, "You're not that good." So always encouraging. I love that woman to death these days. My very first book was Daddy Tell Her. Very first book that I wrote was Daddy Tell Her. That was in 2009. And I cannot believe how much publishing has changed since 2009. In 12 years, the things that were even new in 2009 that were hard to do, there's even been more and better changes since then. It's gotten nothing but easier to get a book published these days as well. So why are you here tonight? You may be here because of the live in Tucson, but let's pretend we're doing that thing across the table, right? And you want to talk about getting a book published. So I suggest that you are here. I suspect that you are here because your support group has only taken you so far. You have a professional club that only can do so much for you. You feel very strongly that you have a nonfiction message to get out to the world. Perhaps you have a kidlit or a children's book that you think will heal children and help families. Noble, noble goals. You know in your heart that you have a future that will be impactful. As an author, speaker, healer, teacher, you know that about yourself. My very first book was Daddy Tell Her. And let me tell you the story about the first book that I put out. Someone had reached into my life and said, "When are you going to do this book?" It was very interesting. I never thought about a book. The idea of self-publishing was so brand new at the time that it was almost unknown when we put this book out. And so somebody pushed me to put a book out. Well, we did that. It was a coach that I worked with. Good coaching is priceless. Good coaching is priceless. So we produced this book, Daddy Tell Her, which was about helping families, put books down, look their children in the eye, and grow literacy and math and family bonding, all of that through books. And so I had one of these meetings because I was still doing a lot of corporate work at the time and government work at the time. So I had one of those meetings with two women from one of the local governments they were doing somebody else a favor because they said, "You should listen to this guy and what he has to say." And so they were like, "Okay." So I have a lunch appointment with these two. So we sit down in this little restaurant for lunch, and I meet the two women, and they're being polite. They're doing somebody a favor. They're being polite. And I put down next to them, each of them, a stack of information about the subject we were going to talk about. And because I was a brand new author and I was super excited about it, I put a copy of Daddy Tell Her on the stacks of information for each one of these people. Not because it had anything to do with anything, but because I was excited to be an author. So we're talking and talking. They're sort of listening, whatever. They're being polite. Thank you. That's fine. Then one of them looks over to the pile of information that I had put down in front of them. And she picks up my book. She picks up the Daddy Tell Her book. And she puts her hand on the book and literally strokes the cover and says, "Oh, you're an author." Oh, you're an author. There is great power in putting together a really good book. There is great power and respect and authority that comes from putting together a really good book. I did not write Daddy Tell Her so that people would go, "Oh, you're an author." My ego is not that fragile. That wasn't why. But there was a moment where I realized, oh, this really means something to somebody. This is really something Books are powerful. So let me ask you for a moment. And if we were in a live workshop, I would do this with you. What books influenced you as a child? For me, a book that I very much remember was a book called The Little House by Virginia Lee Burton. And I believe it was published in 1941. So it's older than my parents. This is a great little book. It's really well designed, really pretty. And it starts with the little house on a hill. And then society starts to move in and the city starts to move in around. And the picture gets darker and grimier and grittier. And the little house loses its color and it doesn't have eyes, but the windows break out, so it looks like the eyes are broken. And this house just loses all this glorious sun. In this picture, you see the sun shining over the house, and the house looks just totally decrepit and surrounded by the city. When somebody comes along and puts the house on a trailer and takes the house out to a sunny hill somewhere and fixes her up and rebuilds her, and then she's happy again. Terrific story. I love that story. I actually have a copy of that book. I think I eBayed it so that I would have a copy of that book once again. It's beautiful and powerful. So when you were a child, was there a book that really meant something to you? Was there a book that really meant something to you? What was that book? Was it a book that was really powerful? I'd like you to think about that. But what about as an adult? As an adult, has there been a book that's been really powerful for you, that has really made a difference for you? For me, that book was War of Art. And it's a book about getting past resistance as an artist, as a creative, to get past this thing that stops us from getting stuff done. And for me, that book was is The War of Art. Terrific book by Stephen Pressfield. It's very popular in the creative circles, that's for sure. So who am I that's talking to you? My name is Sean Bavala. I've been a professional storyteller, an author, et cetera, for more than 34 years. We've done a lot of consulting with Fortune 500 companies, and what I like to call fortunately, there's just 5 of us companies. I've put together a lot of books. I've built websites before Google existed. I've been on this kind of route for a long time. But probably one of the most exciting pieces for me is having been able to do the Small Tooth Dog Publishing Group and to produce books with my wife as well. So we publish books for a lot of other people. If you see the other live streams, you'll see all the authors we've had. But working together with Michelle has been a kind of a special benefit of all of this. We've helped other people put books together. We've got new books coming out. We have authors living their dream by getting their books out. Felt very fortunate to be able to be connected as we have. So what about my grandmother? She had this dream of a book. She had a dream of a book, wanted to get something produced. So what happened to her? I'm going to let Marc Severson into the room here. That's good. So we'll have Marc come in. So what happened to her book? What happened to the book that she had? Hey, Marc, as you come into the room, just go ahead and leave your sound off for now. I'm going to solo this for a bit. So what happened to my grandmother's book? Well, the truth is she never got it published, because back in the 70s, you couldn't just publish a book like you can now. So that dream of her book died. I hope that your dreams of books do not die. And I'm going to talk to you about the different ways to get your book out. I think when they cleaned out the house after my grandparents had died, I don't think anyone found the manuscript. In my soul, I hope that she didn't throw that book out. That's what I really hope, but who knows? So we're going to talk about books and publishing, what that looks like. I'm going to read this disclaimer to you word for word. Not for one moment should you take this presentation to be a promise of any income or guarantee of sales or success with a book or a career as an author. Your results as an author are based on your own work. Anyone who guarantees you anything about your future as an author is telling you a big fat fib. There's nothing for sale in this course today, but I want to tell you that when you listen to us, I don't want you to think that we have some magic result for you in there as well. All right. So what is your why? What is your why for publishing books? What brought you? Why? Why do you want to have a book out? What's that about? In our presentation today on Kidlit, we have some fantastic answers from some authors, and we may bring Marc Severson in here a little bit later to kind of talk through some of this one more time. But what were the old dreams of people who wanted to publish a book? Well, the old dreams were you would become an author and you would ride the mighty Kraken into the world. that you would control the seas in your destiny because you wrote a book, that you had the power in front of you to write and wield words out into the world. That was the old dream, that you would write a book, and then that book would be turned over to a publisher far and away, and that publisher would publish your book, and then you could sit in your walled garden and you could eat bonbons, and you could write your next book and never be bothered with the world ever again. That's some of the old dreams, that you would produce a book and it would magically happen for you out there. Well, those aren't real. That way of looking at the world is most definitely not real. So what was the reality for the longest time with book publishing? The reality was this, that authors would work away pretty much in obscurity, hoping to get a book deal. My grandmother never got a book deal, but they're hoping that some way they'd get a book deal that would save them and salvage their world. Very few people, even with great and creative works, ever got published. The barriers to entry to publishing were super high. They were very hard to get over. You needed to have access to printing presses and media and things like that you could not access like you can now. And authors often would turn their works over to a publisher if the book would disappear into the ether and then come back to them completed someday, whether they liked it or not. That's how the work was done. And the publisher, though, was the one who would do all the promotions on a work. They would do all the promotions on a work because the media and the ability to reach people was very, very difficult to get to. The media was well controlled by others. You did not have access as we do now. You did not have that kind of access in order to reach the world. So what's the reality now about publishing? Barriers to entry have been significantly lowered. You can self-publish your own book. And we're not talking about running copies off on a Xerox machine and putting in a 3-ring binder. We're talking really good-looking books. You can publish your own book, and you can do all your own marketing. And no matter what publisher you go with, you're going to have to do a lot of marketing. But the reality is this: millions of books are released each year. And let's even say that I'm crazy and it's not millions of books. Let's say it's 500,000 books a year are released out into the world. What an outstandingly large number. Your book is a drop in the sea. Your book is a drop in the sea. Where books and book releases used to be much more rare, the amount of books that are being turned over every single day, coming out into the marketplace every day, is unbelievably high. However, excuse me, with that, there is a rise in indie publishing associations that really are encouraging quality books, really good-looking books that are encouraging its members, whether they're self-published or hybrid or however, traditional publishing, all of that, to produce excellence. So a lot of these books that are being produced really are fantastic. The Wild West days of indie self-published books, that's calming down a little bit, and people are starting to produce books that are terrific. And I can guarantee you that no matter how you feel about self-published books, that you've read self-published books that were terrific and you never knew they were self-published. So there's terrific work out here. What we urge you to do is to judge a book by its quality, not how it was published, but understand the numbers. The little note I have on the bottom there is that Kirkus Reviews, which is one of the big review places in the world, gets 73,000 submissions a year for reviews. 73,000 submissions a year for reviews. They can't put 73,000 reviews out into the world. They can't put them in their books, etc. We have books with Kirkus Reviews. That's terrific for us. But understand the huge number of books that are put out to a review organization, and that's only by the people who know to do that. So what's the reality right now? The reality right now is that it's easier to get a book published, but it's harder to make money at it. A book, however, I believe, and we believe, needs to be a tool to help you reach out and help to connect to the world with your expertise and your vision. Authors ultimately are responsible for selling their books. Now, I know we're in the middle of Tucson Festival of Books, and I'm just talking to you across the table right now. But this is a reality that as a publisher, I will do a lot of things to help get your book published. But author after author after author has said, I published a book, they did a good job selling it, now it barely moves, and I get 50 cents a book. If you want a book to move, if you want to impact the world, that's going to come from you. It truly, truly is. It is a balancing act right now for the author between really good crafting and self-promotion. We call it the three lions. So you have the printer, the publisher, and the publicist. And you can be all of those things. You can be the publisher, you can take care of getting your own book published, and you can be the publicist as well. But here's some realities I really want you to dig into. Writing a book changes you. You're the one who's changed. I know Mark has done a number of books, and we'll talk to him in a bit. Writing a book changes you. You're the one who's impacted by the book first. Totally true. When you get a book out, there's something different about who you are as a person. We suggest that you use your books to promote whatever it is your purpose and vision is in the world. You must absolutely grow your platform. When you come to a publisher with a great book idea, but you have no social media presence, you have no mailing list, you have nothing, it's very difficult in this contemporary world to take a book on from an author who has none of their work done. When we talk tomorrow's session on, don't write your book first, I'll tell you more about platforms and what that means. But platforms mean, do you have a place to sell your book? If you are a political superstar and you write a book, you're going to sell that book no matter how bad it is. It's going to sell. Why? Because you got 1 million people waiting for it. Platform is one of the most important things out there right now in publishing. Didn't used to be that way. It is now. Not only are we vetting the book, but we're vetting the author. Are you, as an author, are you going to get your butt out there and make books sell? Do you have a place to do that? We'll talk about that, especially tomorrow. You need to speak and teach. You need to use your book as a tool. You need to practice absurd patience. This takes a long time. When your first book is done, go write another. What are some ways that you can publish books right now? And again, we're just sitting across the table talking. There's the traditional way of publishing a book. You write a book, you take it to a publisher, they vet the book, they say, is this book any good? Does it fit our place in the world? And then they make you a book deal. Yes, we'll do it. No, we won't. That's possible. You may have to go to publisher after publisher after publisher after publisher to get that book out, but that's the model. And then you get a very small percentage of royalties based on the sale of that book. That's how that works. Let's drop down to the one in the bottom, self-publishing. What happens in self-publishing? You write a book. If you are smart, you pay someone to help you edit it. You pay someone to help you design book covers, all of those things. You get professional assistance perhaps, but also you can do every single step of it. You can do every step of it and still do fine. But somehow you make that. The advantage there is that when you sell a book, you get most, if not all, of the royalties based on what you paid to get the book finished, right? You get the royalties, but also you do all the work on it. In the middle is hybrid publishing. The hybrid is kind of a space in between where a publisher, such as work that we do, might say, look, I think your book has potential. I think you can probably sell that book, but we're not quite sure where it's going to go. And so what may happen is you may do shared costs with a publisher to help get that book produced. Now, we have in our organization all three types of books. We have very few hybrid books. We have plenty of traditional books, and we have helped people self-publish. But hybrid is one of those places that you help to contribute the cost to move the process forward. Now, here's why I want to talk just across the table to you. Do not let anybody bully you about how you publish your book. Now, that goes both ways. There are people out there, and you see them on the internet all the time, sometimes on late night television, who guarantee you they're going to publish your book and get it out to the world. That's called vanity publishing. And that means they'll take whatever you put in front of them. They'll take whatever you put in front of them and they'll make a book out of it because it's so good. They'll do it. And then they'll do something called front loading, which means they'll tell you, you got to buy 500 copies. And if they're really, really sneaky, they'll tell you, you got to buy 500 hardback copies, which you're not going to sell 500 hardback copies unless you got 1 million people on your mailing list. That's a piece of bullying. where a vanity publishing group who doesn't vet your work, who doesn't talk you through it, who takes whatever you put in front of them and says it's going to cost you, $30,000 to print your book, and you have to have 1,000 in your garage from us, whatever that happens to be. Don't be bullied by vanity publishing. Don't get so lost in your desire to be published that you throw your house at someone in order to get your book out there, by someone who doesn't vet your book, someone who doesn't edit your book, etc. That's one form of bullying. But I want to tell you there's another form of bullying. And that bullying comes from organizations and people who would tell you an author never, ever pays for publishing. That advice, too, is also wrong. Now, if the first publisher you talk to says it's going to be 50 grand to publish your book or 25 grand to publish your book, that's probably the wrong person. But there are times when you find a publisher that you work with who might say to you, look, we need $1,500, we need $1,200, we need $800, whatever, to help move this project forward. So watch the other side of bullying, which is like, in our perfect rarefied air organization, no one ever possibly pays for a book. It's a new world. And sometimes people do hybrid work, and there is outstanding hybrid work out there. There is outstanding hybrid guidelines that many, many indie publishers use. That is not my first choice as a publisher, but is it an option for people? Yes, it is. Do I think that a book that is published through hybrid is less of a book? No, because what did I suggest that you do? That you judge a book by the quality of the book and not how it's published. So don't be bullied either way when it comes to publishing. Don't let somebody take all your money and your grandmother's rent to publish a book. And also don't get so caught up in a place where somebody's like, oh, an author never pays to publish. Yes, they do sometimes. That's not always our first choice. Have we done it? Yes, we have. Most of our stuff is traditionally published. So those are some of the options that you have as a publisher. So now that I've told you this stuff over our coffee here, what should you do? Well, I think you need to take some action on your dreams. Remember at the beginning, I told you these things. I thought you might have a burning desire to get a message out to the world. You want to help people with your message. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed by choices and decisions. Maybe you're hearing things from publishers that make you feel uncomfortable, like you have to stock 1,000 books in your garage, okay? Maybe you think this is never going to happen. Maybe that's where you're at as well. So what should you do first? First thing you should do is write and research. These things go together. And you come to our workshop tomorrow, we'll talk about this a bit. But research is incredibly important. Your first idea for a book might thrill you and might do really good things for you, but you must do your research. Is there a place for your book out in the world? And as you're doing that research, you will adjust your writing and change your writing. So be involved in both writing and research at the same time. You need to build your platform. You need to be connected to social media. People will say, I can't do social media because it cuts into my writing time. Selling books is what pays for your writing time. So being connected to social media, you don't have to be on every single one of them, but you need to build a platform. Because if you bring me a book as a publisher, I'm going to talk to you about your platform. If you have no connection out there to the world, I'm going to send you off for a year to build a platform before we continue talking about your book. Do you have connections to the world? Now, there's other ways to do it. You might have a social platform. You might have people that are just can't wait for your book to come out. You might have 10,000 people in an organization that you run. I don't know what it is. Build your platform, get the coaching that you need in order to produce this. You must understand this. Publishing, no matter how you publish, traditional, hybrid, or self, is a pay-for-play industry. Everything in publishing costs money. And somebody has to pay those costs somewhere along the line. If you pay for most of those costs as a self-publisher, you get the most rewards. If your publisher, through traditional publishing, pays most of those costs, you get to say, I'm an author, and you get some pennies on the dollar for your book. There isn't a lot of profit in publishing, I'm just telling you. You have a choice. You can spend money or time. You can invest money to get a book published as a self-published person. You can invest your time doing research, etc., but you get to spend one of those. And we urge you, no matter where you're doing this, to get help with all or some of this huge, big process. So what happens to books? Well, let's look at some case studies. I love this part. Let's look at some case studies. I have an associate who publishes ebooks. And ebooks, sometimes you make money, sometimes you don't. But this person who has put out these ebooks, which is based on dog care, he's asked us not to show the covers of the books. In the last few years, has sold 10,000 copies of his ebooks. It pays his rent. Can you be successful with a book? Yes, you can. Does it even need to be physically printed? No, it doesn't, because it's all electronic. So ebooks is an opportunity. Also, ebooks can fail miserably, but he produced a really terrific book. Sometimes books fail. One of mine, one of my books, I did this research about one of the things that people have to do is write an about me. You know, when you write things about your bio and have to introduce yourself or whatever at your clubs, your organizations, or your chamber, or whatever. People were like, I don't know how to write this. I don't know what to say. I don't like talking about myself. So I did all that research and I produced a really cool way to write your own bio. You know, this thing where you have to introduce yourself. This really cool way to do it. It has multiple steps and it's great. I did all this stuff on it. I did my research. That was like one of the most searched things on the internet. Oh no, this failed miserably, because I didn't see clearly to the research, which was, why is it one of the most searched things on the internet? It's because there's 1,000 internet sites that teach you how to write this. Nobody was going to pay $10 a piece to get a book on how to write an about me when it's all over the internet. So now people get this as a gift when they work with us. So miserable, complete failure. You can do everything right and a book can still fail. I'm not a bad person. It's not a bad book. It just didn't work out. We also do stuff where we help people with self-publishing. This book from Leni Del Siemens, we helped her produce her book. We did different parts of it. She said, would you help me do this? And she paid a la carte for us to do that. She did her own cover work, for example. That's her cover design. I think she paid somebody $25 to put the cover together. So we helped her produce that. We did some coaching with her, etc. She's doing really well with that, but that book sells at the back of the room, so to speak. Especially if we ever come back doing live events again, that's where her book sells and it supports the work that she does. Books can help you in other ways though. Some of the first books that I put out was Daddy Teller and Apples for the Princess. And we've used these books to build workshops for schools. And because we could put really good books behind these workshops, I will just say that they have been remarkably lucrative workshops. And when the world comes back together and we can start doing live events again for parents, schools have to spend so much money on parent education. I'll just say that these books have paid for themselves over and over and over again. So do books fail? Yes, they do. Do sometimes they succeed in ways that you can't imagine? Yes, they do. Have either one of these books been on a bestseller list? No, they haven't. Do I care? No, I do not care when I'm putting those checks in the bank from the work that we did with these books. It does not bother me in the slightest. It's not about ego, it's about service. So we come to the point where it's like, okay, thank you. That was too much information. It's late. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to go hide right now. So what is it that you should do? Look, I've been working on this for a long time myself, since I was a kid in high school. And working with media, working with your platform, start thinking about how you are present on social media. That's the first thing you need to know. I also want you to know that you can do this. You can do this. You have the skill set to do it. And what you don't have, you can learn. So you can go the traditional route, as many people do, and it's fine. You can self-publish, and there's so many tools out there for you to learn to self-publish. We can help you with that. You might end up doing a hybrid. You might have a great idea for a book, and you might need to just work with the publisher to get the funding correct on that. You might need to do that. But I'm telling you, you can do this. If you have a dream about a book, do that. And do it because it's the right thing to do. Write because you are called to write. Publish your book because you are called to publish your book, that you know that it's supposed to be out there. Whether people buy it or not is a marketing question. But you can do this. I absolutely believe you can do this. It is rewarding to be an author. It is so rewarding when you watch people use your book. We put together a book called You Wake Up One Morning. I had this vision about producing a book that would help kids write about things, making things up. You wake up one morning and there's a tiger in the corner of your room. You wake up one morning and you're 11 feet tall, whatever it happens to be. And we've had this book, and I don't go directly into the schools anymore, but I've hired staff to do this, who've taken this book into the schools and have the kids use this to learn storytelling, to learn how to communicate. And in the book, they do art, they draw, they write, they do all this stuff. And to get these pictures back and to hear from the people who teach this course and get these pictures back of these kids using work that I've created, that is remarkably rewarding. It's remarkably rewarding knowing that the work that you put out as an author serves a purpose. It's a tremendous reward thing. Doing this work with my wife has been remarkably rewarding. Watching Apples for the Princess, a story that I told for a long time, a story that I taught other people to tell to their children, become a book that not only got a lot of attention, but my wife put it together with me, but also has frankly paid for itself a lot. Terrific book, rewarding. Then there's books like How to Be a Storyteller that we have out, sits on Amazon for the most part, and just sells, just dribbles out there every month, just dribbles it out. Am I making a living on this book, How to Be a Storyteller? No. But the fact that people see that, and 4, 5, 6 people a month see that book and go, oh, that's the book that I need after how many years this book has been out? Terrifically, terrifically rewarding. My grandmother didn't get to put her book out because the world wasn't set up for people to do that at that time. It wasn't. And so her manuscript is gone and her dream disappeared, no matter how good her work was. Your life does not need to be that way. If you need someone to help coach you, we have a couple of ways to help you do that. And again, there's nothing for sale on this call right now. The first thing I would tell you is this. If you are really new to this and this whole thing's like overwhelming you as you watch this, I invite you to go to authortip.com and put your information in there, your name and your email address in there. And we will send you a little PDF checklist that's essentially, are you ready for publishing? Plus there's a little video you can watch that explains that to you, but that puts you into our system that we can help educate you, train you, help you to know what your options are. Most of that's done through email. So we really invite you, if you're new at this and maybe you've been attending events at the Tucson Festival of Books all weekend and watching virtual stuff all weekend and you're overwhelmed, if you want help kind of rolling into it, authortip.com is the way to go. We can help you create stuff if that's something that you want to do. I want to take you back to, I'm in the wrong, there, sorry, all those screens were wrong. I want to take you back to this one. If you've been at this for a while now, and you maybe have a book out, and you're trying to figure out how you get to use your creative genius, your zone of genius, your passion capital in the world, you're trying to figure out, how do I market my book without sounding sleazy about it? How do I market my book without being pushy about it? How do I make the living I want to make with my book? We have a much deeper program. It's called Author, Speaker, Healer, Teacher. And to start exploring that, if you're ready for kind of like, all right, I need to go deep on this, we have some really a variety of different types of coaching for you. They're all an investment. It all takes both an investment of your time and your treasure in the world. But if you'd like to see what we're talking about with that, I invite you to go to speaker100.com. And there's like a 22-minute masterclass that we teach there. Teaches you the 4 steps to something we call the communicator's cash flow. How to get your word out to the world, find your financial stability, make an impact on the world, and do it without being really sleazy about it. So that's something that we would urge you to do. I don't know if you can see this, but on the other side of the world right now is Marc Severson. Marc, can you hear me, Marc? Unmute yourself there, brother.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah.
Sean.
You know, you and I, I'm going to turn on. And so anyway, Speaker 100 is where you want to go. So 2 things you want to know, folks, Author Tip and Speaker 100. I'm going to tell you one last thing, and then Marc and I are going to talk for a bit. As part of our presence at the Tucson Festival of Books this weekend, we are giving away T-shirts with this lino cut design on them. You can see it in the picture there. You can enter into that contest, no obligation. You don't have to buy anything. It's only U.S. addresses, though. You go to smalltoothdog.com/drawing, put your name in there. And then tomorrow night, after the festival is done, about 7 o'clock or so, we'll draw 6 names out of the people that have entered the contest. Just put your info in there. If your name is drawn, Kelsey will contact you. with your particular code so that you can get the shirt for free. smalltoothdog.com/drawing. So that's something else we want to invite you to do and to enter into that contest as well. So that's that presentation, but I just want to wrap with Marc here for a moment. So let me turn this off.
Rapping is my thing.
Rapping is your thing. So this is Marc Severson, who does have a book published with us, which I have on the other shelf at the moment. Sorry. Don't Throw Me in the Choya Patch, which is a trickster style. Do you have a copy of it somewhere? There it is, up there. The poster's up on the wall. Woohoo! So Marc has produced a book with us and is producing another book with us. Plus, he not only has he done traditional publishing with us, but he's self-published works too.
And I've done hybrid too. I've done all three.
And done hybrid. And I think, and so we're still talking about how the next book in the series is done too. So that's still in the conversation. But you've experienced all of this stuff. You've had all of the experiences of different ways to publish. And I'm just kind of throwing the floor at you right now to say, if somebody's watching this and they're like, what do I do? What do you think? What's in your head about that, about the process of getting a book published?
Well, I'll tell you the thing that happened to me for my first book. It was a novel. It was a Lovecraft horror fantasy inspired book. I had actually rough drafts of 3 of them at the time, but one was finished. I started shopping it around here, there, and everywhere, and just didn't get a nibble, nothing. But at the same time, I connected with the foremost authority on H.P. Lovecraft, currently operating out there, and he sent me to different publishers with the idea that maybe they might be interested. He liked the book.
Yeah.
So it still didn't catch. Several people said, maybe, but not right now. And so finally, I went back to him, told him, this was over a period of probably 2 years. I went back and told him, I'm not clicking here, but I'm looking at possibly self-publishing. What do you think? And he says, look, I think the book's good enough. You should just go ahead and do it if you want to self-publish. So that's how I got started in self-publishing. Now, I didn't take your advice because you didn't give it to me back then. I did. I got my wife to help me edit the first book. Thank God.
Right.
Because I am the worst editor in the world.
We all are of our own work. Yes.
Yeah.
It's true.
And then I did my own cover. And the first one was fair, but the second one was better, and the third one finally came up. And that was the nice thing about the self-publishing is I can go back, reissue it with a new edit or a new cover or any of this stuff at any time because it's just sitting there. Yeah. And I could do that. So that's one of the few advantages. Yep. One of the disadvantages is I think I made $9 on it last month. I mean, this is not a killer out there,
Yeah. The autonomy comes at a price.
Yes,
it really does. I mean, you have this autonomy to, as a traditional publisher, can I put a new edit out and a new cover? Yeah, I can. It's complicated, but as a self-publisher, you have so much more freedom.
Yeah, that's the easy. That's one of the easy things to do. And so actually my first book that I put out is in its 3rd edit, and it's much better than it was originally. I actually changed the order of chapters, and it came out. It's got all the same stuff in it, but it's just in a different order, and it's much better than it was.
Yeah.
In the meantime,
you've been okay with that. You've gotten good attention. I've seen some of your promotion on that book, on those books.
Yeah, I also clicked with a good advertiser who does a page that's just about Lovecraft based stuff, and I'm on his page and people go there just for that. Yeah. And so I get a good, and I pay for that, but he doesn't charge me an enormous amount, but I pay a little bit for it, and it's worth, I think, what I've paid for it just to get that exposure, And he's a good guy, and he's doing stuff that I'm interested in doing too. So it works. We're scratching each other's back.
Right. Yeah.
The hybrid was interesting, and it did not turn out the way I expected it to. And it did not turn out the way that the first person I talked to told me it would.
Yep.
Although she didn't really lie to me, she just didn't tell me everything, is what it came down to.
Yeah.
And, in the end, I had to just cut it off and say, look, guys, I'm done. It's out there. It's okay. It's, I paid a lot more money than I was going to get it out there. But I also said, they came back, said, we need this. I said, sorry, not for me.
Right.
I've done what I can do here. I'm retired. I'm not looking to make money. I'm just out there getting this stuff out. That's what it comes down to.
I'm always nervous about a company that says that after they've made an agreement with you, wants to keep pushing you, especially if they're asking you for more money.
Right.
I mean, now I can go to an author and say, here are some other advertising options if you choose them, because there's several $1,000s we'll spend as a publisher on advertising, but I'm always making people aware that there's another choice if they want to do it. But it's not like, oh, I forgot about this. I never forget. I never forget how much something costs.
Right. Exactly.
It doesn't happen. It's not like, oh, we didn't mention this to you. No, I mentioned, it'll get mentioned. Yeah.
And then finally, of course, the traditional publishing through you guys.
Right.
And if I could just go that way from now on, I would, because that it's, again, I'm not looking to make money here. It's not why I'm doing it.
Right.
But I'm also not looking to mortgage another mortgage on the house,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So
the complication on children's books is how much art costs.
Yeah.
Art's really expensive. And people will say, well, I can go to Fiverr and get it for $200. Well, have you seen $200 worth of Fiverr art?
Well, that's one of the reasons why, of course, I did my own covers on the self-published ones.
Right.
And actually, I hooked up with somebody who did some really nice photography. So the last couple books I put out have pretty good covers. I'm very happy with them.
Yeah, I know you've fixed up a lot of them. Yeah.
So, it's a matter of choices. You have to make choices. You have to decide, what are you willing to do? What's the outcome you want to have?
Yeah.
And how much are you going to put into it in terms of effort, time, and money?
Right.
And try and get a good handle on how much of each you really, intend to do, is what it comes down to. I would say on the self-publishing, I haven't put in very much money on them at all, and I've got 4 of them out there.
Right.
But to be honest with you, I'm actually finishing up one now, and I'm going to submit it to a traditional publisher, because I talked with him and he said, sure, send it along. We'll take a look.
Right.
Which is better than most of the responses I got, originally. So,
excuse me. Yeah. It comes down to, I mean, your work with us. I'm very pleased with Choya Patch. Don't throw me in the Choya Patch.
Me
I love
too.
it.
I'm thrilled.
I love the book. I love it enough to do a second one. But also, I can tell you that when you came along with that, your timing was really good, because I was looking for a project like that. And so your timing was excellent. So not only did I look at your book and go, this is good, and could vet it that way. And we went back and forth, and I said, edit this, take out another 100 words. I mean, we did all of that. Right?
I know.
We did all of that. But I knew that the book is where it was something that we wanted to move to next. Yeah. And so you came along at the right time. And I think authors need to understand how often that happens, because they look at rejection letters as personal.
I suck.
That I'm being rejected.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes when you're being selected, it also isn't the compliment you think it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it depends on what the publisher wants.
Yeah.
It depends on what they want. And we'll talk more about this tomorrow in the other workshop tomorrow about the journey. But anyway, so I'm glad that you popped in tonight. Thank you for that. I think that really helps us around on that. Good. Hey folks, again, if you would like to be in the drawing for the t-shirt, it's smalltoothdog.com/drawing. So please come take a look at that. If you'd like to see our schedule for tomorrow, it's smalltoothdog.com/TFOB, as in Tucson Festival of Books, TFOB. And you can see the rest of the live streams we've done today on the same YouTube channel that you're on right now. So Mark, thanks for popping in. Don't leave yet. I'm gonna turn off the YouTube and then we'll talk a bit more. So thank you all. We're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow on the next 3 things that we got going. Check everything out, enter the drawing, go to authortip.com, get in our system. Let's start talking. Anyway, thank you all very much. Mark, hang on a second. I'm going to turn everybody